spent many years studying chimpanzees. And of course, they are our closest living relatives. There are all these similarities in biology and also in behavior. And one of the things which has been most fascinating to me is the tremendous importance of early experience. There are good chimpanzee mothers and bad ones. And the good ones are protective but not overprotective. They're playful, affectionate, and supportive. Supportive perhaps is the most important of all. But without question, those individuals who had good mothering, good early experience, tend to be adults who are assertive, who play an important role in the reproductive role of their community. But the ones with harsher, more punitive, less affectionate, less playful, and above all, less supportive, tend to grow into adults who are tense and nervous in their interactions with others and play a less important role in the reproductive success of their community. And when I first began talking about these results, it was the human child psychiatrists and human child psychologists who were the most interested, far more so than anyone in animal behavior. It's pretty clear to me that the psychological growth of a child is impeded if the child is not able to interact with the natural world. There's something about the greenness of nature, the birds, the butterflies, the blue sky, the leaves. All these things seem to me to be something very important for our psychological development. This led to our youth program. It's called Roots and Shoots. Roots make a firm foundation. Shoots seem tiny, but to reach the sun can break through brick walls. And if we see the brick walls as all the problems, environmental and social, that we have inflicted on this planet, then this is a message of hope. Hundreds and thousands of young people around the world can break through and make this a better world. The main message, every individual, every one of us makes a difference every single day. We can't live through a day without impacting the world around us, and we have a choice. And every Roots and Shoots group chooses 3 projects to make the world better for people, for animals, for the environment that we share, and running through it a theme of learning to live in peace and harmony within our communities, between nations, between religions, between cultures, and between us and the natural world. Perhaps one of the most important of all for me was a young man in Tanzania, which is where the program began. He was about 18, and I was asking a group of them what Roots and Shoots meant to them, and they said things like, well, it makes us feel good to help, it makes us feel happy to meet others who feel as we do, we have fun. But he said, what I love about Roots and Shoots is that I know anywhere I go in the world, even if I know nobody, if I find a group of Roots and Shoots, I will have found my family. We need to inform youth, and we need to empower them. We need to have them rolling up their sleeves, getting out and knowing that they can make a difference, and that all around the world, others like them are making a difference too. That's the hope. So that's my little message. Thank you.
Jane spoke about the importance of adult chimpanzees in the nurturing of the young, and what happens to them early in life affects them in their adult lives. And of course, you're ensuring that around the world there are other adults who are engaged in the lives of children. Teachers, something that we take for people we take for granted. Why don't you share with us the role of the teacher around the world and the work that you're doing?
In the inner city part of Seattle, there was a group of students, predominantly African American students, who were studying French and failing, doing very poorly. And the teacher had the good idea to connect these kids up with another group in Senegal. And so there, the kids, we looked at the situation there, we set everything up, and the kids in Seattle and the kids in Senegal were very awkward, but the kids in Seattle were sort of amazed because there were some black faces speaking French. It just blew their minds. Then they started singing, then they started dancing, then they started asking each other questions, And the job here was to talk about the connection between global education and academic achievement. It's not just an extra thing that happens, okay, global education, and then this, and then that. The connection between learning, when people are connected with each other, is extraordinary. So measuring the growth of the kids in the Seattle schools is that their achievement in French soared and stayed that way because we sustained the connections. It wasn't a one-shot deal. And it was an extraordinary thing to see kids, like yourself, doing these things.
As we prepare future leaders, be they in business or government or other walks of life, that we develop a syllabus for the 21st century that not only focuses in on acquisition and development of knowledge, but also has some components that deal with developing awareness of and sensitivity to other cultures. I think that we need to do everything possible in the coming years to promote the kinds of policies that will support and encourage educational and cultural exchange. And things like, you mentioned teachers before, teaching of critical languages and bringing those teachers into the United States for this is a U.S. perspective, obviously, for dialogue. But I think we really need to have a syllabus that allows our children to see their own world through somebody else's eyes.
We all forget, again, as an adult, if you go and you don't have breakfast and you don't have that cup of coffee in the morning, about 10:30, maybe 11 o'clock, the stomach begins to growl, there's a little bit of a headache, and you also don't treat the people you're working with the same way. You're a little bit shorter and all of that. Think about kids. So many kids that end up in the principal's office at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, mainly because they haven't had breakfast.
We eat far too much saturated fat, salt, sugar, to the exclusion of the things that are very important. 20% of your brain is made of fish oil. We did a very simple study in a young offenders institution, which naturally is mostly people from very deprived backgrounds. These are people who, on average, even in prison, thump each other once a week, and they get reported to the governor. We gave half of them fish oils, minerals, and vitamins, and the other half placebo, and the kids who received the fish oils, vitamins, and minerals reduced their rate of thumping each other by a third. That's the biggest effect on criminal activity that anybody's ever reported. And can we get the British government to take any notice? No.
It's interesting coming from the world of sport. I know that, I've been brought up in sport and did sport all my life and had a great access to it. I traveled around the world a little bit like Jane Goodall and saw children living in refugee camps, orphanages, in villages, and actually realized that the sport or the access to play, the limitations of this is dramatic. It's actually very, very limited possibilities for children. One of the challenges we are facing in the developed world is what we heard around here, like we can't have them to play because it's not safe enough. We're not letting kids outside anymore because we're afraid of them getting kidnapped or problems with children. And the free play, the spirit of free play is critical for a child's development. This is one of the elements of social interactions, of brain development, for language development. And this is all proven in research.
I'm an advocate of the arts and science because they both spring from wonder. What is it? How wonderful are the stars? And you start to sing to them, and you eventually evolve to opera and rock and roll. Children are full of a sense of wonder.
If one looks at some of the most gifted, talented, and productive individuals, what you'll find in many cases, if you look at their school records, invariably you'll have comments to the effect, should have paid more attention, a dreamer, not organised. And what we're looking at now is the neural basis of creativity. And part of it seems to be the ability to link different regions of the brain, different specific regions, which seems to be correlated with the ability to link concepts that maybe others have not seen.
I was able to get a job as a sommelier based on my extensive knowledge of wine and food. And I started teaching people. I started talking about wine to my coworkers, who were people who would never rise above the level of tradespeople, or at best were good waiters. But most of them, I would have to say, would be disenfranchised. They never really were probably good students, exceptional students, and they certainly didn't feel that anything that they did in life would contribute to civilization or to their culture, or even barely to their families in some ways. So I found that by training them and getting them in touch with the sense of smell, these people who may not have been classically receptive to classical teaching methods were very receptive to learning about their own sensations, because it was something they didn't know about their own bodies or their own capabilities. As I find that many people are unaware of that, but most of them could be world-class wine tasters. It's almost everyone has the faculty, but we haven't been trained to utilize it. So a very small input in terms of education has a very large effect.
It's an honor to share my thoughts with you today on what children need to grow up into balanced and talented adults. Adults to whom we can safely entrust the future of the world. To begin with, I should like to say a few words about the recent UNICEF report, an overview of child well-being in rich countries. For this report, the United Nations Children's Fund drew upon 40 indicators relevant to the lives and rights of children in 21 rich Western nations. The Netherlands came top of the final list, followed by Sweden and Denmark. I'm of course very pleased with this finding. But before you decide to come and live in the Netherlands with your children, I hope that of course, you might want to know why my country scored so well. The study showed that the Netherlands scored best on indicators that measured children's subjective feelings of well-being. Dutch children feel happy and are satisfied with their lives. This probably has to do with the way in which we treat them. We give them space to be children. We involve them in important decisions. We show them respect. In the Netherlands and in other countries as well, since the 1960s, society has come to center on the individual. And the same thing has happened in government policy. I've always opposed this notion that the individual is all important. Policy that focuses only on individual self-reliance and economic independence is too limited. Because people do not live in isolation. Man is a social animal. People only become complete in their relationships with others. We highly value relationships and social networks. The majority of people spend most of their lives in families, first as children, later as parents or carers. My government believes that the state also has a responsibility when it comes to raising children. That's a major change in attitude. In the past, family autonomy was largely unquestioned, but the present government wants to change that. A hands-off approach is no longer an option. And that's because we don't want to turn a blind eye to children who have problems at home. Because children who don't get a good start in life often can't take part fully in society as adults. And because we want to put children's interests first. We're also encouraging children to take part in sports. Not only because sport is fun, but because children come into contact with values and norms when they are on the playing field. And they learn all kinds of useful skills to work together, to obey the rules of the game, and to deal with different cultures. To face the future with confidence, we need to invest now. We have to give children room to develop, room to play, and room to be children. Thank you.